Over the course of several months in 1898, the Savo man-eaters, an unusual pair of male lions, both lacking manes, began to attack and kill several construction workers for a railway bridge in Africa. The lions behaved erratically, stalking the campsite and dragging workers away from their tents before killing them. At one point in time, the killings were even said to have happened daily. Eventually, the animals were killed and their bodies can be seen on display at the Field Museum of Natural History in Chicago. Fast forward to 1996, and a fictionalized adaptation of the historical event would get made with Val Kilmer and Michael Douglas in starring roles, giving the lions the intimidating names of the Ghost and the Darkness. Now, a film that has unfortunately fallen into obscurity, The Ghost in the Darkness tells the story of Colonel Patterson's work on a British railway that's being attacked by a pair of man-eating lions. Late during the night, the lions would typically attack the workers, and that's where all of the chaos you'd expect to go down does. Now, most movies, I don't actually think do a good job at selling the threat of wild animal attacks anymore, and over the years, many of them have kind of embellished a lot of things and left stories that feel a little more fantastical when you compare them to real life. This movie is something of an exception though. Despite the fact that the story in this film and the actual events are pretty different from one another, the actual stuff that happens within the movie is pretty grounded and entertaining when you put it up against other animal attack films that come out. And the usage and behavior of the lions here is definitely above any other movie I've ever seen on these types of animals. What Ghost in the Darkness nails right off the bat is a sense of real-world threat and urgency when it comes to how these men are going to deal with such a serious situation. And it's the kind of movie that I really wish we got more of today. Director Stephen Hopkins gives what is, in my opinion, his best work here, after coming off of other horror sets like A Nightmare on Elm Street 5 and Predator 2. There's something about this film, though, that I personally always found to be a little odd. Every time I watch Ghost in the Darkness, I think I'm seeing a rough cut of the movie that hasn't really been completed just yet. This film came out in 1996, and there's little use of any sort of special or computer effect that's noticeable, and what usage does exist in the movie happens to be extremely limited. The editing is also very fast-paced, without any real sense of scale or wonder when it comes to the size and scope of the African continent. Establishing shots definitely do exist here, but they're kind of rarer than you'd think, and the limited camera movement can make the movie feel a bit older than it actually is. This is a very raw and unpolished kind of product, and it's partly why I think it stands out over other 90s jungle movies like the live-action Jungle Book, Mighty Joe Young, or Anaconda, for example. William Goldman pitched the screenplay as a cross between Lawrence of Arabia and Jaws before delivering it to the studio in 1990. It would take a while for it to come out, and Michael Douglas would eventually wind up signing on as a producer, but when it did, I definitely think it made the 90s stand out as far as the whole safari genre goes. Douglas plays big game hunter Remington, who shows up midway through the movie to help Val Kilmer kill the lions, and his performance is definitely the stuff of excellence. For comparison's sake, if you've never seen it before, if you're a fan of the Lost World Jurassic Park, and you definitely should be, you're gonna love The Ghost in the Darkness, because this is the kind of high-stakes historical horror movie that grounds itself in seriousness and intensity with a ton of great kill scenes, iconic one-liners, and eerie atmosphere that makes for a really fun thrill ride. I've always thought that the movie is a little too fast in parts, and stuff can happen in the blink of an eye with little room to breathe. But between the awesome story that you get to see unfold and the excellent performances from pretty much everyone involved, this is a forgotten 90s classic that I think deserves rediscovering immediately. One scene in particular I will never forget seeing for the first time involves Colonel Patterson's wife and one of the lions, and it's one of the most memorable and scary sequences that I think exists within that entire decade. I'm not going to give it away just in case any of you haven't seen it, but in my opinion, this is absolutely the greatest lion horror movie ever made, and while I wouldn't call it the scariest film in existence or even a great piece of cinematic brilliance, it's a raw and rugged adventure that features an incredible cast and excellent music, by the way, to boot. As a fan of The Lost World, The Ghost in the Darkness is right up my alley, and I think a lot of you who haven't seen it just yet will probably feel the same way.